So why don't we go ahead and get started? We've got a pretty big group tonight. Thanks again for joining us for our Community Resilience Fund Grant Workshop. I am Jackie Clare. I am the Community Grants Program Manager. I just want to let you know, if you hadn't noticed, the meeting is being recorded this evening, and we'll have that online in a couple of days for review. And so tonight I have a couple of colleagues joining me. Patricia Mason is the Risk and Compliance Manager with Housing and Neighborhood Services. And Nicole Story is the Community Engagement Division Manager. And I am going to turn it over to Nicole to start us off.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jackie, and welcome to everyone who are here. I see a number of current partners, and the rest of you, I assume, are future partners. So I cannot wait to make your acquaintance and to learn about the great work that you do. As Jackie mentioned, my name is Nicole Story, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Division Manager for the City of Charlotte's Community Engagement Division. And on behalf of the City of Charlotte, I want to thank you for your continued contributions to the City of Charlotte, for the work that I know that you do late at night and early in the morning and all of the other hours to serve the people that are so important to all of us, and for being here tonight to learn about this grant opportunity. Our City Council in Charlotte are committed to supporting our community in all that they do, and particularly with these funds that we've been fortunate to receive through the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, as many of you have probably heard of those dollars. This grant is part of that $60 million ARPA investment in the City of Charlotte that is going toward housing, workforce development, employment, and community vitality. And this is a partner effort, through a partner effort that you'll hear from in the coming months with Hispanic Federation. This will represent a $2.75 million award to local nonprofits, with 1 million of that particularly earmarked for small nonprofits. And we thank City Council for ensuring that that wish was clear and that we could share that information with you. This grant is intended to support nonprofits that were impacted by or serve populations that have been impacted by COVID, as so many of us have. And I just want to finish my remarks by thanking staff. Jackie mentioned Pat Mason, Jackie Clare, and Lacey Williams have really put an extraordinary effort behind this grant, which is new to us and is reinvesting some funds that just came back our way. And so I want to thank them for their extraordinary effort. And I also want to ask your grace as we learn this grant together, because it is brand new and there may be some questions tonight that we need some time to research. We will absolutely get back to you with answers to those questions. But without further ado, I turn it back to Jackie.
All right, thanks, Nicole. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. Maybe. All right. So Nicole has already kicked us off and shared some of the basic information with you about the program. So I will not repeat what she just said. So we'll move on to the next slide, which I want to share. There are grants up to $250,000 available for your nonprofit organizations within 3 areas of community resilience. And those 3 areas are housing and neighborhoods, equity and inclusion, and sustainability and the environment. And these bullet points are examples of work within the area of community resilience. However, your organization might be doing other work that meets this criteria. So this is not meant to be an exclusive list. It's simply to give you some ideas of what type of things qualify under these 3 broad categories. So there are 2 tiers of funding available, and small nonprofits with operating budgets of up to $250,000 may request up to $75,000 in funding. And medium to large nonprofits with operating budgets over $250,000 may request up to $250,000. One note that I want to make here is that your funding request should not exceed 30% of your total operating budget. And there are two pools of funding. So small nonprofits, the total award pool is $1 million. And for the medium to large nonprofits, the award pool is $1.5 million. So like all grant programs, there are eligibility requirements that all organizations must meet. So your organization needs to serve a public good, and you must have been operating in the city of Charlotte for 4 consecutive years. And your work must align with one of those areas of community resilience. So as a reminder, that was housing and neighborhoods, equity and inclusion, or sustainability and the environment. Your organization needs to be a 501c3 or under the fiscal sponsorship of a 501c3 tax exempt organization. And if you are using a fiscal sponsor, your sponsor's mission must relate to yours, to your organization's mission. You will need to have filed a current Form 990. And for small organizations whose gross receipts are up to $50,000, you are not required to file a 990, but you do need to submit a 990N. We will accept a 990N or a 990 as the required documentation. Your organization should have an operating budget of at least $20,000. And you'll need to be able to demonstrate that your organization works with individuals or communities that have been impacted by COVID-19, or provide proof of operation within eligible census tracts. And those are shown in blue on the map to the right side of your screen. Some additional considerations, because these grants are federal funds, all organizations must register with sam.gov and provide a unique entity ID and expiration date in the application. The third bullet point here only applies to organizations that expend $750,000 or more in federal funds in 1 year from all sources, including the CRF if awarded. So if that applies to your organization, you are required to obtain a single audit. And then lastly, funds cannot be passed through to another organization unless using a formal fiscal sponsor. So they can't be used for membership fees or sub-granting. And again, these funds are for general operating support and program expenses. So they may not be used for capital costs. So this is the list of required documents that you will upload in the application. So you'll need to pull together your operating budgets from 2021, 22, and 23, your current board of directors roster, your IRS determination letter, or if you're using a fiscal sponsor, your fiscal sponsor award letter and the or not award letter, but agreement letter, and your sponsor's IRS determination letter. Again, your 990 or your 990N, and the unique SAM unique identity ID number and the expiration date. That SAM ID number is a tongue twister, sorry. So the SAM registration is online at sam.gov, and this is a 2-step process. So if you haven't done this before, the first step is to sign up online. And signing up means getting an account and setting up a profile on sam.gov. Also from this page, you may also renew registrations if you already have an ID number. So once you've signed up, the second step is to register to become certified to receive grants from the federal government. And this page might be too tiny to see, but there are several questions that you'll be required to answer. And they're mostly related to your organization's financial information, your tax ID number and details, and excuse me, your business contact information and contact information for your executive director. It's really important to register early. According to the SAM website, it takes 10 to 15 business days to get your full registration processed. And it may take longer if they have any questions or there are any problems or issues with your registration. So do that as early as you can. So once you've determined your eligibility and you have your SAM ID number in process, you will be ready to apply. And so the application process is sort of a multi-step process. So the first thing that you're going to do is navigate to the online application, and I'm going to show you that in a moment. And you will either register as a new organization, or if you already have an account with us, you'll use your login credentials to log into the portal. If you do have a previous record, you'll want to make sure that as the applicant, you as the individual, you want to make sure that your profile information is current and up to date. And you're also going to want to make sure that your organization info is up to date as well. The grant application is currently open, and it will be open until 5 p.m. on June 30th. So you've got most of the month, or the rest of the month, to get your application in. The applications will be reviewed by a committee made up of city staff and community members. You'll be notified of your award status in August. And you will also be, if you are awarded a grant, you will be invited to attend an orientation session, and you will also sign a contract with the City of Charlotte. Once your contract is signed, the first grant installment will be paid in approximately 45 days once the contract is executed and we've received your submitted invoice. So as I mentioned, the applications must be submitted on the grants portal. Here are some screenshots of what that looks like. And the easiest way to find the portal is to navigate to charlottenc.gov and search for CRF in the search bar on the website. And that's where most of you found the link to register tonight. So on that main page for the Community Resilience Fund grant. At the bottom of that page is a link that says grant portal. So you're going to click on that link and that will bring you to the portal. And once you're there, you'll either click on the link to create a new account or to log in if your organization already does have an account with us. So as I mentioned, you want to make sure that your applicant details are complete and accurate on the dashboard. If you need to make any changes, you're going to click on those pencil icons to the right of applicant or to the right of the organization name. And then when you're ready to apply, you want to navigate to the apply button at the top of the page on that green menu. The one thing that I want to point out, on the application page, there are multiple grant opportunities that you can see and apply to, the ones that are open. You want to make sure that you click on the apply button for the Community Resilience Fund because the grant applications are different. So if you click on the neighborhood matching grants or on any of those other applications that you see, you'll get a different set of questions and it won't make sense. So just be careful to click on the apply button for the Community Resilience Fund grant. So on the next slide, these are the scoring criteria. And so we just want you to keep these in mind when writing your application. So the questions that you'll be asked to fill out will help the review committee determine the vulnerability and need both of your organization and of the communities that you serve. They'll tell us to what extent your organization is serving persons disproportionately affected by the pandemic, how many people your organization is serving, and how deeply those people are being served. They're also looking at the strength, the category strength. So to what extent is the organization's mission and programming tied to those fundable CRF categories that we discussed? The impact of COVID. So to what extent has your organization been affected by COVID? The ask/burden proportionality. Is the amount requested proportional to the impact of COVID-19 on the population that you serve? And then they'll also be reviewing all of the eligibility criteria to make sure that all of those criteria are being met. So after your application has been approved, if you are granted an award, we want to talk to you a little bit about the next steps involved. So if you're awarded a grant, you will complete vendor registration in the city's registration system. You'll also need to submit a current certificate of insurance, and you'll attend contract signing and grant orientation. The date for this is still to be determined. We will let you know when that is as soon as we can. It's largely related to the number of applications that the review committee will need to review. So we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible and let you know if your grant application has been approved and when the contract signing and orientation will be held. You'll also, once you've been approved, you'll also submit your first invoice and documentation to the city to request payment. So documentation that you'll include with your invoice might include copies of receipts, canceled checks, a payroll report. For your first payment, you'll receive 30% of your grant award, unless your grant award was $10,000 or less. In that case, you'll receive 100% of your award in that first payment. When you submit your subsequent reports, that's when you'll also submit your next invoices. So those will be due quarterly, so 30% each time. Until the final report, and then you'll receive the final 10% that will be remaining in your grant award. You'll be required to complete quarterly reports and schedule check-in meetings with a member of our community engagement team. And so in those meetings, you'll discuss with your liaison any challenges you're having with your project. You'll share your successes and opportunities, and also share any upcoming events and whatever support that you may need. So our team is here to help you along the way. If you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to us at any time so that we can help you be successful with your grant implementation. Once your grant is complete, in about a year, you will submit a final report. And in the final report, you'll report on your the number of community members served and really show what the community impact was by having the grant. How did the grant dollars help your organization stabilize revenue over the last year? And then we'd like to see a narrative of 2 success stories that you can either fully or partially attribute to the City of Charlotte's organization support. And then our staff may follow up with you for further details once we receive that final report. So hopefully this isn't too daunting. I know federal grants do have a lot of requirements, and it may sound scary and daunting, but hopefully we've shared that it's not too much information to compile, and we are here to help you again every step of the way. So I know that there are lots of questions, so we will open it up now to questions. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see. I did see a few things in chat. So let's see, where's the stop sharing button? There we go. All right, so if you have questions, just go ahead and use the hand raise feature, and I will call on you as I see you. So Matt Olin, go ahead.
Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate it. I have 2 questions. One is probably one that's on most people's minds, which is that if a nonprofit makes a request that is more than what is available in the pool, can the city choose to award, the nonprofit less than they requested? Or do you know what I'm saying? Or do you get eliminated if you've asked for more than is available?
Nicole, I would say that partial funding could be available. Would you agree with that assessment?
Let me make sure that I understand the question. Matt, are you asking if a nonprofit can ask for an overall award more than what's stated in the program guidelines? Or are you asking if we run out of money and there's partial funds left, if we will give a second round?
Yeah, depending on what the total sum of the asks are from all the nonprofits, can the city choose to offer smaller awards than what the nonprofits actually asked for? If that makes sense.
It is generally not our practice to reduce the amounts requested, because often it changes the nonprofit's ability to deliver the service or the service that they provided. But being that these are operating grants, I think there's opportunity to consider that. Let us do a little bit of thinking on that, and some of our response might be dependent on how much interest we get in this grant. We have 100 participants in this webinar, so we're really expecting and hopeful for a lot of interest. But let us work on that, and do not let the answer to that question dissuade you from applying if you are interested. We're going to do all that we can to support as many entities as we can.
Thank you, Nicole. And it was indeed, it's the fact that these are operating support grants that sort of triggered the question for me. My second and final question is, and you may not know the answer to this, the pending debt ceiling bill would theoretically rescind about $28 billion in unspent COVID relief funds. Do you anticipate that any of these funds would be jeopardized by the terms of that bill?
We're definitely unable to answer that question at this time, but
yeah.
if that should impact us, we'll certainly take appropriate action to consider what funds we do have available.
Awesome, thanks, appreciate it.
All right, Angela Allen.
Hey, Jackie, thank you. I was wanting to follow up on the comment that was just made about operating funds that Matt said. Can we talk a little bit more about that? I just want to be clear that the expectation is that we're going to be applying for overall operating funds and not specific programs, right?
Right, so it can be used toward programs, but it needs to be no capital funding. So it needs to be salaries, programs, overhead, supplies, things of that nature. Just no capital expenses can be included. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. JB.
Yes, thank you. I had a couple questions about the 990.
Yes.
For physical sponsorship, is the 990 required for the organization that is being sponsored? Or are we saying that the 990 from the physical sponsor actually provides their 990? Just trying to get clarity around that.
Okay. Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 990 is for the applicant, not for the fiscal sponsor. Is that correct, Pat?
Yes, you're correct, Jackie.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's the 990 for the actual, or because I was under the impression that 990s were only for 501c3s, nonprofits. So if you're being physically sponsored as an applicant, I don't know if we would actually have, a 990 because we actually are requesting a physical sponsor. Does that make sense? If we had a 990, we wouldn't need a physical sponsor. Is kind of what I'm saying.
Okay, Pat, can you field that question for us?
Yes. Hi, JB. Yeah, your 990 could be from your physical sponsor. If that's the case, we would like to see the agreement that you have with your physical sponsor, because most agencies that have physical sponsors do have a written agreement that lay out roles and responsibilities of that physical sponsor with that agency.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so next question we'll take is from Eric.
Yes, thank you, Jackie. Just a clarifying question about the operating budgets that are required to be uploaded. For those of us who are on a fiscal year that is not January to December, in our case, it's July to June. So, for example, 2023 operating budget, would that be for the fiscal year 23-24 or for 22-23?
I would say whether if you're on a fiscal year for 2023, 24, 22, wait, just the last 3 years, your current operating budget, your operating budget from last year and the one before that. So however that works out, whether that's calendar year or fiscal year.
Yeah,
so start with your current and go back 2 years.
Okay. So we are wrapping up a fiscal year now at the end of this month. So it would be for this current year and going backwards, not the budget that we're working on for the new fiscal year that'll start July 1.
Exactly. You're
Okay,
right.
thank
You're
you.
right on point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Yes, thank you, Jackie. I had two questions. One had to do with the disbursement of the funds if one is awarded. Maybe I missed a step. When you guys talked about the 30%, does that mean the invoices that we would be submitting would need to equal 30% of the grant award?
Correct.
Okay, so we need to make sure we're spending it in that fashion. Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes.
And then the second question, I came in just a smidge late. I was having issues with Zoom, and I thought I heard you say something about those, those categories of services and issues that you guys are interested in. I wanted to see if, I thought I heard you say something like their suggestions. Are those hard and fast categories, or?
The 3 categories are, but the bullet points underneath are just to give you ideas for what falls under each category. So you might be doing different work that falls under, those headings, and that's
Gotcha.
okay. So if what you do isn't doesn't have its own bullet point, that doesn't mean that it doesn't count. It's not meant to be an exclusive list.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Maria.
Sorry. Hi, good afternoon. I have a couple of questions. Is this a one-time grant or something that we can reapply?
This is a one-time grant.
Okay. And how much time do we have is we have the funds, we are awarded? We have to use the funds for the fiscal year that we are in, 23-24 in this case, or we can extend the amount of money for the next fiscal year?
It's 1 year, so four payments quarterly. So it's a 1-year grant.
Okay. And for the report, and this is my final question, it needs to be something specific about the outcome. For example, I'm in the preschool educational area, and so it's evidence-based assessment report data that we have to present as an outcomes, or how that works.
Nicole, can you help me out with that?
I apologize. I was answering a question in the chat. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. I'm the director of a preschool. So for all the grants that we already got in the past, I always have to report in base of outcomes that are evidence-based. So on assessment that are evidence-based. In this case, it's the same thing. How are the outcomes, what requirement for the outcomes on the reports that you guys asked for?
Yeah, great question. The city has worked hard to try to provide as much flexibility as possible within this grant, within the recognition that we are investing public dollars and have a stewardship responsibility to do that well. So in terms of outcomes, I think you have some flexibility to decide what that means to you specific to your organization, because all of the nonprofits represented and funded are probably going to do a pretty wide variety of things. And so the evidence-based requirement is not part of our guidelines, but we may have some follow-up questions for you upon receipt of the grantees' applications to help us arrive at a better definition.
Thank you.
Of course.
All right, Shamira.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify. I'm vice president of the Urban League here in Charlotte, and we are a fiscal agent for smaller nonprofits that have budgets under a certain amount of money. So when they go and apply for federal grants, we're allowed to submit our 990 because they don't have enough money to file a 990 for an audit. So I want to make sure in this case, like just to clarify, if anybody is using a fiscal agent, and I think Patricia may have touched on it, but I didn't hear the response. The fiscal agent is allowed to submit their 990 for the smaller nonprofit. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Shamira.
Okay.
Yeah, just as long as they have provide us with the written agreement that you have with that organization, because a lot of the organizations, since they don't have a their 501c3, there should be a written agreement that lays out the roles and responsibilities of the fiscal agent.
Okay, perfect. And my last question, and I apologize because I'm doing laundry, I'm sure you hear that. My last question that I have is, in the realm of the workforce development under the Community Resilience Grant, is there a data metrics that will be linked to job outcomes, or do you not have those data metric numbers as of yet?
I will need to get back to you on that. No, I don't have those numbers right yet, so I'll make a note.
Because I just didn't know if it was going to be based on, like, say, if we applied and we say that with this funding, we can serve 75 people, and out of that 75 people, we can make sure that 70% of them get placed into a job. Is that going to be what the metrics is? Like, do we define what a research and evaluation will look like for this, or do you all define that for us?
Nicole, can you help us out with that?
You will define that. There's just no way that we can pattern a requirement based on all of the wonderful things that this group does.
Okay. Does that need to be included in the grant? What we anticipate the outcomes will be if we are awarded the funds?
Jackie, I believe that is a question in the application. Can you confirm?
I will, yes.
Yeah.
And while she's looking at that, and I just want to ask about application strengtheners. Are you all looking for letters of partnership? Like if we were to partner with a smaller nonprofit, would that strengthen our application? Or if we were to partner with, say, other workforce development agencies or consultants that are doing this work, is that something that could strengthen our application, or would that hurt us?
And that's another question for Jackie, specific to the scoring criteria. So we'll give her a moment to bring that information up. Letters of partnership and participation, I don't believe will ever hurt you in applying for grants, particularly with the city of Charlotte. In terms of if they'll strengthen your application, you'll just have to decide if you think that is the best path forward. Again, because this is a grant for operating funds, it's a little bit different than if you were endeavoring as a catalyst to a new programming or an additional nonprofit. So I don't know that the partnership is as important for operating grants, but it definitely would help to address that component of the application of where you are serving a disparate impact due to COVID.
Yeah, because I mean, it may be a partnership where we try to employ employees from smaller nonprofits that can't afford operational expenses. So I just wanted to ask before I made that a part of the application. But thank you so much.
Absolutely. Great questions.
And I'm just going to reshare my screen for another moment and share the questions, the application questions with you. These are available online on the, when you go to the application portal on the right-hand side of that screen, you'll see something that says CRF application or guidelines and questions. If you click on that, you'll get a copy of the guidelines and the questions. So in the application, you'll be asked to describe your mission, your programming, the communities that your organization serves, the impact of COVID on the communities that you serve. You'll choose one of the Community Resilience Fund themes that most closely aligns with your work. And you'll describe how it connects. You'll talk about how many people annually are served. And then you'll put in your funding amount. And remember, that can be up to 30% of your operating budget. Your request should be proportionate to the hardship caused by COVID-19 to the communities served. And so you'll want to discuss how that is proportionate and how the dollars will be used to support the organization in continuing to serve vulnerable populations. And then you'll describe your organization's financial situation. So you'll define it using these definitions: stable, threatened, or vulnerable. How you will stabilize or continue stabilizing revenue to operate past this grant cycle. So once the grant funds are expended, how will you continue on? And if you require a fiscal sponsor, then you'll upload that agreement letter and the details for that. And then we talked about the documentation. So your board roster, the IRS determination letter for you or your fiscal sponsor, a copy of the agreement if applicable, and then the either your 990 or your fiscal sponsor's 990, and then the 3 operating budgets. And then the ARPA requirements, so your unique entity ID and expiration date. And then the application also lists the payment schedule there for you as well, and the reporting requirements. Okay. All right, so we'll continue answering questions. Ken, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. I'm Ken Schrader with Reentry Housing Alliance. The first criteria you have for all organizations to qualify is to serve the public and operating in Charlotte for 4 consecutive years. RHA has been a 501c3 for just over a year, but we've been operating in the community for over 5 years. Does that work? Does that still qualify us?
Yes. Yes. So you don't have to be a 501c3 for 4 years, but your organization has to have been operating in the community for 4 years. Did I understand the question right? So you've been operating for the right amount of time, but you haven't been a 501c3 for the full 4 years.
Correct.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Jackie or Pat, there are a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
One of them, can we upload 990s from 2021 and 2022, or do we need to show our operating expense documents for those years?
That would be the operating expense for those years. You just need the current 990 for 2023. And then the operating budgets for the last 3 years, starting with the current year, whether that's calendar or fiscal.
Excellent, thank you. And this might be a Pat Mason question. Can indirect rate be utilized to expense administrative oversight? And if we need to research that question and come back, we can.
Well, I think it depends on what that indirect rate is, because that indirect rate is, yeah, we'll need to get back with you on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Freddie. You're on mute. Freddie, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, thank
There
you
you
so
go.
much. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, my question goes towards our organization is in the 501c3 registered for more than 10 years, but at this point we had to file for to request a file extension for our taxes. Are we still in a good condition to apply?
Pat, can you answer that?
So you requested a
Filing extension.
an extension to file your 990?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Yeah. Can you provide us with the extension form that you had to file with? Yeah, because you do have to file an extension. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Provide
Okay,
us with
perfect.
that and we'll look at it. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so there's still some hands raised. I'm not sure if it's just that you didn't take them down or if there's some new questions. So John or Angela, do you have more questions?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay.
So you said that the first invoice is due 45 days after the contract signing. And then it's going to be for 30% of the total. If I apply for 250, which is what I'm planning to apply for, that's $75,000. But Stephanie was asking if we have to provide receipts with that. So I guess my question is this a reimbursement type grant, or are you paying the money up front? And do we have to supply receipts for $75,000 worth of expenditure within the first 45 days of the contract? Do you know what I mean?
I do. So actually, Nicole, can we go backwards? Or are we only going forward?
Tell me what you mean about going backward. Oh, in terms of the receipts to demonstrate.
Yeah.
Let us get back to you with that. The disbursements are structured in a way to provide some cash up front, and so we probably need to think through if anything is required to receive that first allocation. We will definitely address that via some follow-up. Thank you for the great question.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. John, you have another question?
I actually haven't gotten to ask any yet, so this is my first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Are there I have two large questions. One is, of the three themes that you describe, housing and neighborhoods, equity and inclusion, sustainability and environment, do you have more explanation of what you mean by that somewhere in the grant proposal? Or because I know you have the dot points that are meant to be illustrative.
So, yeah, so the categories, you know, they're broad, and you can, you know, depending on what your organization does, you just need to, you know, make the case which of those three categories most closely aligns with what you do.
But you don't have any
So
more definition specifically of what you mean by, for instance, equity and inclusion.
don't think we have. I can try to put together some definitions, but no, I don't have written definitions of those three categories. But let me make a note, and we'll try to explain that a little bit better.
That'd be great. And I have one other question, and that is regarding the presentation of budgets and financials from previous years. You've asked for budgets, not actuals. So do you just want to see the just the budget, not for the previous 3 years? You don't want to see what the actual receipts and expenses were against budget? Just the budget?
Pat, can you respond to that? You're shaking your head yes.
Yeah,
The operating budget?
We asked just for the operating budget, but we probably need to go back and look at that, but we just did ask just for the operating budget.
Okay. Are you going to have a standardized presentation, or will you take whatever presentation we have? Like, are you going to provide a template for us to say, please fill this out with your expenses so that you can compare apples to apples?
No, we don't have a template. So just upload
Okay.
your version.
Great. Thank you.
Ken, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. A follow-up to my original question that actually somebody in chat has the perfect follow-up for me. So I'm going to just read their question. What document will be required to show operation for 4 years if an agency has a 501c3 for only a year? So basically, how do we prove that we've been serving the community for those 4 years prior to becoming a C3 org?
That is a good question. I guess you put that in your narrative, in the questions, and we would, I don't know how we'll need to figure out how we're going to verify that, because I don't believe that there is a question that directly correlates to that.
Okay, so that's to be determined.
Yeah, we'll get back to you on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, yes.
JB, yes.
So, and then just for clarity for me, just to give a context, I have a social work company, and as a social work, although we are definitely a health profession, the North Carolina board requires us to register as a PLLC. We do have a physical sponsor to help with some of our nonprofit health programming. But I guess the question is, if our physical sponsor is providing the 990, does that mean that we need to provide our taxes along with it, or how does that work? Along with the agreement?
Pat, can you help with that?
And JB, when you say taxes, what taxes are you referring to?
Just our agency taxes that we pay every year.
Your agency taxes that you pay every year that you file with the IRS, or that?
Yes, correct. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would be,
Yes.
that would be helpful.
Okay.
Melissa.
Hi, thank you. One, great information, but two questions, separate categories. One, as far as operating expenses, We typically categorize our utility, waste pickup, and those types of things for our facility as a part of our operations costs, and any large repairs, whether it's AC units or things like that for the facility, we count that as capital. So is that how you're categorizing operating expenses?
Not sure about repairs. Pat, do you want to weigh in on that?
Well, not repairs. We count repairs as capital expenses.
Okay.
So I know that that's excluded. But as far as utilities and things like that, we count that as operating. Is
Yes,
that fit your same definition?
Yes, utilities would be operating expenses.
Okay, fantastic. And
So-
the other, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say for capital, I think we're just defining that as equipment, furniture, land, building, stuff like that.
Okay, great. The other question that I have is in regard to our community impact. So as a part of the foundation, we have strategic partners where we work with several other organizations to partner with those groups for in a number of different categories. So as far as our impact, would we need to show any evidence of that or letters of support for that in the grant application packet?
I think letters of support are always good to include, but they are not required.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions? You know, Nicole's been kind of fielding questions in the chat. Are there any chat questions that we need to get to?
Not currently. A couple of people have asked how they would access the answers. We will capture the questions answered in this workshop, and additionally, the questions that we have some research to do on into a FAQ document. And we will post that on the website, which contains the application link, and we will also distribute that to folks who have registered for this workshop.
All right, thanks, Nicole. Are there any other questions? JB, do you have another question?
If future questions arise, can we reach out? I know they have you listed as a POC, Jackie.
Yes, yeah,
Is
you
that
can.
is that what we do?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me and I'll research and get back to you, follow up with whomever on our team to get the answer, and I'll let you know. Maria, do you have another question?
Sorry. May I ask a question, please?
Yes.
I have a question. I put it in the chat, actually. The
Okay.
stipulation surrounding the 30% of your agency's operating budget. I know you asked for multiple years. So which year do you consider the 30% off? Which year would you use to calculate the 30%?
The current year, right, Pat?
Just the current year. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Right. Any other questions?
Becky, there are some questions in the chat about the 3 categories. One, just folks wanting to see those again, and then a specific ask about how an organization working for a healthy community, cancersupport.org, might fit.
All right. So the 3 categories are housing and neighborhoods, equity and inclusion, and sustainability and environment. And I can pull up, if you'd like to see the bullet points, I can pull that up in a moment. And what was the second part of that question, Nicole?
There was somebody looking for help categorizing where their agency might fit under those 3 headings. The agency does works for a healthy community. It sounds like supporting folks experiencing cancer.
I think that would probably fall under housing and neighborhoods in that category. Would you agree with that? Let me pull up the bullet points. share my screen again. All right, are you able to see that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, there we go. Yeah, I think the closest would be housing and neighborhoods. You know, fostering connections, you know, vulnerable residents, strengthening families and social networks. So, does that help?
That was a question from Cindy Teddy. Cindy, hopefully that helped you out. And as a reminder, these three categories in bold are really what dictates eligibility of purpose for the grant. All of the dots underneath of that, as Jackie shared, are just kind of ideas to help articulate what those headings might mean. It is not a complete list, and it does not mean that if you do things that you think fit in these headings that are outside of the bullet points provided, that you would be ineligible. The three category headings are really what was dictated by council, and that's what we'll be going by.
Right, so it looks like there's a couple more questions. Angela, do you have another question?
Yeah, just one more. Looking at this list again, I kind of think that we fit under both housing and neighborhood and equity and inclusion, depending on which of our various programs we're talking about. Should we just pick the one that fits best, maybe? Because my organization is big and we do a lot of different things.
Yeah, I would say choose the one that you feel aligns the best.
Okay.
And then in your narrative, you can, you know, expand on that and say, we also, you know,
Fair. Okay.
do some work in this other area. Maria, do you have another question?
Yes. Can you send this recorded meeting, or are we going to be able to have this slideshow or no?
Yes, I'll send you the slideshow, and when the meeting is posted online, I'll send you the link to the recording, and that probably will take a couple of days for us to get that ready. But I can send the slides in the morning.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, any other questions? All right, well, if there aren't any other questions, thank you for joining us again, and we will send you the slides and let you know when the link is posted for the recording. And we look forward to receiving your applications and learning more about your organizations and the great work that you're doing in the community.
Becky, one more question in the chat here that I missed. City Council did not adopt specific definitions of the areas of community resilience. You are correct, John Quillen.
Right. Sorry, I've lost the chat box.
I think we've got them all.
Okay.
Thank you again to everybody, and to Jackie and Pat for ensuring that we've got a great application and process here.
Yes, Melissa, if you have additional questions, reach out to me and I will get the answer for you. Oh, I see another hand. Lisa, did you have a question? You are on mute.
Okay, I'm so sorry. That was kind of my problem. I couldn't find the raise my hand button because I'm driving, so I do apologize. So real quick, because part of what we do a lot of training, mental health and wellness training. We have a support group and we use slideshows and during the pandemic, we kind of lost our tracking software that we do, that we were doing at the time with our measurements. So in order to get that back, is that part of capital or is that part of my expense?
Software, I don't think would be a capital expense. Pat, can you confirm that?
No, software is not a capital expense, it'd be more operating.
Okay. And then, so like our computers, is that a capital or is that operating?
Computers are capital because you have to, yeah.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you so much.
Okay. And I also saw a question flashed on my screen about salaries. So yes, salaries are eligible under general operating support.
I'm trying to take my hand down and I don't know how to do that. I'm sorry. So I don't have another question.
No worries. All right, did we get all the questions? So yes, you can use for salaries. All right, well, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and look for some follow-up information from me tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.